let's take a look at a couple of these things here, guys, right now. This is Tulip King talking about Polymarket and the strategies and how it's different from all these other markets. We're gonna look at just a couple of clips right now.
The number one strategy is called bonding, where it's essentially you're buying stuff at like 95, 96, 98. 95 is probably like where people would draw off like what's a bond, right? And the thinking there is that structurally there's an unnatural sell pressure in these markets. So if I buy something at 20% and it gets up to 98% and there's a day left, I'm probably just going to close my position actually, because that last 2% isn't worth the like black swan risk to me, because I've already made my gains, right? But I still kind of believe it's going to 100%. So despite my personal belief that it's going to 100%, I'm a seller at 98%. So the very top sliver of these like close to resolution order books is like unnaturally low. So a very common strategy is people love to just buy stuff that's at 95% and resolving in a day, 99% and resolving in a day, 1% yield, 1% yield, 1% yield, right? And that's how you get these P&L charts on these polymarket traders that just look like they've been painted. They're just beautiful, right? So that's probably like the number one strategy. The number one.
So he's talking about entry into a poly market bet, waiting till the last day or two to take a position where you're only standing to win 1 or 2%, but your odds of getting that 1 or 2% profit are higher than when you enter that trade beforehand, which is actually very intriguing. Okay, so here's another clip. We're gonna watch this again tomorrow. And
when you start to look
nearly in its
entirely.
Sorry.
When you start to look at Polymarket as like the underlying infrastructure of binary outcomes or tertiary, right? Like you can have these things resolved to multiple states, but like when you look at Polymarket as a resolution machine for these things, and then you start to realize how many other financial instruments are just wrappers on top of binary outcomes, you start to see that I don't even think Polymarket is like competing with the sports books. I think it just is completely superseding them, right? And so like the analogy I've been using is like DraftKings or like Prize Picks or whatever. Those are like the calculator, right? And like Polymarket's the iPhone. Like you just get the calculator for free. When you start to look at Polymarket as...
So, I mean, basically what he's saying is that a lot of these, like betting or taking a position on Polymarket for sports betting or sports, taking positions, is a lot is different than just doing it on FanDuel and Underdog Fantasy, because you're able to take a more acute position on Polymarket than you are on Underdog. You're actually able to bet or take positions in things that are happening, like I said, with the yield, like getting that 1 or 2% on a play, and knowing that you can get that, instead of being like, okay, in the beginning I'm just gonna bet on how many yards this guy's gonna get. Like you can actually bet towards the end of that game. Okay, how many yards is he gonna get? Okay, I'm definitely gonna say no, but there's only, I don't see that happening, but there's only a 2% profit that I can get, but I'll take that profit. That's a locked in profit. You know what I mean? Like you're edging the market. I mean, there's a lot of things going on with this. We're just looking at clips. We're looking at clips. Does he have any more? Because the full interview is on YouTube. Bonding. We talk about bonding. Okay, yeah, this is interesting too.
Again, you can bet against consensus if you diversify the portfolio. So if there's 20 markets for TGE and I bet, and say all of them are like likely yeses, and I bet no on one of them, that will kind of probably screw me over. But if I have a broad perspective, that just in general, more projects will not TGE than had been perceived, then I bet no in all of them, right? And I take a couple losses, but the ones where I actually turn out to be correct were low probability events that supersize my returns, right? Yeah. So that's like I'm not betting against any particular market because Polymarket is really sharp and it will probably be right on most of those. But on the couple it's not right, my payouts make out for the loss, right? So that's like thinking about like structuring a perspective through multiple positions. You can bet against consent.
You hear what he said there? I mean, that's something you can't do in crypto. And you can't do in stock market either. When you're in the stock market, perp decks when the market farming airdrops to another way to earn. No, I agree with you, Drip. Someone let me hold 100K. You're hilarious, but but again, in Polymarkets you can structure your positions on something. You know, like if I'm betting on, Venezuela and what's happening in Venezuela, I can bet on the date that I think that Venezuela and the US are going to engage in conflict. I can also bet on when the date that I think Maduro would get removed or not get removed. I can actually bet on, I think you can bet on the manner of how they're going to engage, by land or by sea, or but you can have multiple little plays within a structured position, right? So I have like 10 different positions within a perceived perception of that position. So I could have 10 different positions off of one game plan, off of one, perception of what I think is going to happen. And within those 10, right, some are going to pay out a lot and others are going to pay out very little, and you're able to hedge against yourself, to where you can calculate, okay, I can make probably this much money, and this is actually my actual risk, opposed to just betting meme coins or just getting in a meme coin and hope for the best. You know what I mean? And your research can actually give you an edge on what it is that you're talking about. You know what I mean? So, very interesting stuff. I'm getting into it. And it's not because, crypto's sucks right now. It's just that I'm seeing a shift, and you got to be okay with change. You got to be okay with markets changing, and because that's where the opportunities are. That's where the opportunities are. And right now in crypto, I got to tell you, man, I'm not seeing a lot of smart people. I'm seeing a lot of people that are banging their heads against the wall and getting angry. Not because it's a bear market or a bull market, but because crypto is becoming a little bit, I wouldn't say predictable, but almost like you can see why things aren't working out. And you can see why things are changing. And there's nothing wrong with that. And crypto will be here, But I truly think probably Bitcoin's going to 10x before, or Ethereum's going to probably 20x before we see little RWA altcoin going 100x, man. I really I could, I don't know. That's what it looks like. Maybe I'm being a little bear in the bear market. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. Maybe maybe that's what's going on. But anyway, guys, yeah, I'm out of here. Like